talk until midnight. So, all right, I got 6:30. Let's go ahead and pray, and I'll get started. Heavenly Father, we love you, and I just thank you for this day. I thank you for each one that's here, and I thank you for the amazing adventures and places I've been able to go and experience, and just give you praise and thanks for that. Lord, I pray that this would be beneficial, enjoyable, and Lord, we just give you praise and thanks. And once again, we thank you that not only do we have the four Gospels, we have the fifth, the Holy Land. And so, God, we ask your presence here. Bless those who are joining us online, and we give you praise and thanks in Christ's name. Amen. So, all right, y'all that are joining us online. Yep, I am streaming. We are good to go. Okay, who said that? Okay, hey, Kote. Good to hear that. And there's about a 10-second delay, so if you guys have questions, hopefully Kim will be able to answer any of those if she's paying attention. If not, we'll just do the best we can. So, Earl Bradshaw, and I'm going to invite you guys to go around, introduce yourselves, just your name, so that we get to know everybody. And so I'll start. I'm Earl, and
Kim Bradshaw, wife of said Earl Bradshaw, and three-time traveler to Israel.
Thank you. Carol Strickland.
Kennedy.
Gary Kennedy. Kevin Kurtz. Sharon. There you go. Excellent. Thank you, guys. Glad you guys are here. So I'm going to jump in, and I put the dates up here, June 23rd through July 1. We actually traveled June 22nd through July 2nd, but we weren't in the country. And so part of the thing about traveling to the Holy Land, when you go there, we never leave out of Charlotte direct there. We usually have to go to New York or Philadelphia. This time we had to fly out of JFK. And the flight is about 10 and a half hours. And because of all the COVID restrictions, it was a real pain to get there. But once we got there, I had the most incredible experience. I've said this over and over again. I know that this trip that we took here was not just a once-in-a-lifetime experience. It was probably a once-in-a-century because we hit it perfectly. We were one of 8 groups from the United States that were allowed into the Holy Land. Because of COVID, we had to get special permission from the Minister of Health in Israel. We had to be vaccinated. We had to have a clean COVID test, a PCR. And then once we got to Ben Gurion, which is the airport in Tel Aviv, they gave us another COVID test. And to make sure that we weren't lying about being vaccinated, we had to be quarantined in our hotels until the results from them drawing blood to make sure that we had antibodies in our blood before we could be released. And so once that happened, through all of that, it was the most incredible trip because the crowds were so light. And in fact, in some places it was so light that places weren't open. But I'm just going to kind of give you a day by day. After we got cleared from that, we started at Caesarea at the Sea, which is right here. Now, Caesarea at the Sea or Caesarea Mediterranean or Maritime is a location that is on the Mediterranean Sea. And as you see right here, this is actually the outside of the theater there. It's not an amphitheater, it's a theater. And the difference between the two, and this was one of those, I kind of smiled going, I didn't know this. A theater has an open end to it, and an amphitheater is closed all the way around. So this is actually a theater that is over 2,000 years old. It was built in honor of Caesar. And the part that I love about this that we know about more is because of Paul's adventures in Acts 25, 6, and 7, when he appeals to go to Caesar, but he has to go through Agrippa, Felix, and Festus, and he's in front of them. And so you have the outside looking at it, which is amazing. Usually there's people all over the place. What's great, they're using a 2,000-year-old theater for modern productions. So you can see that, and this has been restored a little bit up there, but you can see the seats down below and a couple of more and how it kind of spreads out. And then here's what the display. Talk about the ancient and modern together. They were actually doing a rock concert, and I would dare say, looking over at Kevin, you recognize all the money on the lights there and the speakers. It was just absolutely overwhelming, and you're going, okay, but if that's not there, you're looking out on the Mediterranean Sea, which is absolutely stunning. But if you're facing this and walk as you're looking at to the right, or this way, you turn and you have this 2,000-year-old arch here. So you want to talk about just kind of being pulled one way to the other. And then you get away from it and you can see the whole bunch there. But that's just a great starting point. Most tours start there because it's so convenient. Then you come in and you look out that it's all the way out. That's actually a created harbor so that it can be taken in. And it's just beautiful as you look at it, and a little bit tighter and more stunning on that. That's Mediterranean Sea. And if you can see this building out here, that's an 8-foot door. When we were there, and this gives, and the reason I'm pointing this out is that when we think about the storm that comes up on the Sea of Galilee, those storms always came from the Mediterranean Sea. And when you have stormy weather off the Mediterranean Sea, it would run a valley, the northern valley, the Jezreel Valley, all the way to the Lake of Galilee. But I was there in February 2015, and there were waves as high as that right there. That's an 8-foot door way out in the distance. It was 10-foot swells coming off. And that day, we had rain there, and as we went to Mount Carmel, we had rain, sleet, snow, and fog all in one day. And that was the same year when we went up to Golan Heights, there were 10 inches of snow up there. And so this is just, you see this beautiful, some of the most beautiful water you'll ever see. But so we spent some time there, and just another picture of that. But I want to go back. Kind of down in this area is where the really where the palace would be, because it's you can understand why advantageous. And most likely somewhere in this area right here is when Paul speaks to Agrippa, and Paul's trying to convince him. And I love how it says in the King James, it says, Paul, thou hast almost persuaded me to become a Christian. Now, the new translations kind of say, Paul, do you really think in such a short time you're able to persuade me to be a Christian? And then Paul's response to Agrippa is, long or short, I wish everybody here listening to me would be just as I am except for these chains. And for me to think in my heart, especially even King James, is to go, how many times have I almost persuaded someone to become a Christian? And I still love how a good friend of mine, Ed Butler, said whenever I miss a putt by that much, I go, oh, I almost got it. And he'd say, well, if you miss heaven by that much, you bust hell wide open. So wouldn't want that for anybody else. So we go from there. We have another picture of that. And then what's pretty amazing, after they built, or as they were building, they realized that you're on the Mediterranean, you don't have good water. So what would the good Romans do? They build an aqueduct that brings cool mountain water 6.5 miles away. And this is still standing, and this is along the Mediterranean coast, maybe a quarter of a mile north of Caesarea Maritime, and you can just see it's still used there. Now, what's even funny is that on the other side of these, you got people at the beach, just kind of like, oh, yeah, there's 2,000-year-old aqueducts. What's the big deal there? We're at the beach, and I think the one sign says no barbecuing there or no grilling right here. So, and then it stops. But how amazing is that the Romans were so good that their stuff stands up for over 2,000 years. After we left that, we actually went to Tel Megiddo. I don't have a picture of that because we didn't get to go in because of our quarantine. We just went by it. Tel Megiddo is what they call it now, but it's Armageddon. And so it's kind of a major crossroads, and it's a place that when you hear the word tell, there were mountains that looked unnatural in the Holy Land until they started doing archaeological digs. And what they found is that there were civilizations built on top of each other. And at Tel Megiddo, there's 21 layers of different civilizations. They would go in, raid, tear it down, build something new. And so, but I didn't get many pictures of that or any pictures of that interesting. But this is one of the traditional sites of the Mount of Transfiguration. We're actually in Nazareth on the outside at the Mount of Precipice. I can't ever say that word very well. Thank you, Kim. And it's where the tradition where Jesus is on the edge of a cliff and he walks through when they're ready to throw him off. Tradition said it's here, but you have this incredible view that you see the traditional site of the Mount of Transfiguration. And then here, you're looking down into the Jezreel Valley, and it is just amazing agriculturally. These people have this crazy idea that you pick fruits and vegetables when it's ripe. Have you heard of such a crazy thing? So guess what? Their tomatoes taste like real tomatoes. And the bananas are the best bananas you'll ever eat, even if you don't like them, because they're sweet instead of picking them when they're green and gassing them. So I love eating there. But there's two things about this in the distance that's pretty cool. This village right here is where the widow's son that Jesus was going to heal passed away and raised again. And over in here, most people, historians and theologians, believe that's where Gideon had the separation of his soldiers, those who bent down to scoop or either lapped by water that way. So you're looking at some pretty historical and interesting stuff there. But when you look over this, it's breathtaking to see the view. But for me, I'm always interested in the agriculture because it's overwhelming. And just another one as you look down upon it, and then one last one of the Mount of Transfiguration there. And once again, it's in our 24 years of going, just seeing the building up. To the best of my memory, none of this was even built when we were there 24 years ago, but they continue to build, and their infrastructure is absolutely amazing. Then we finish up the day, and day number 2. Now, in the 24 years we have been going, because there is so much water pulled off for agriculture and so much growth, and it's an arid region. The last time I was there in 18, the Sea of Galilee was over 50 feet below maximum level. This was the first time I had ever seen it this was my 7th time going, that it was at full capacity. Last time I was there, this is kind of a little inlet that it was completely dry. And I just thought it was interesting. Here you have what they call the Jesus boats. All of us tourists go out and do that. And then you see a speedboat that's going to pull kids or adults around to have a great time. And I am 100%. Every time I'm on the Sea of Galilee, I have a moment. It's like, I love how I heard someone describe it. It's a thin place. Feels like the distance between heaven and the earth is thin. And so we go out. We're on the Jesus boat. Now, you see the wood, and it looks kind of nice, but they're all metal boats just covered in wood. That looks better that way. And that's actually looking on the western side, just north of Tiberias, which is the major city there. And there's a major cliff, and there's a Valley of Doves that we'll visit later on that I'll talk about that kind of runs at the very edge over there. And the reason we talk about it, it's the natural route between Nazareth and Capernaum. So we can say with great certainty that Jesus walked through that. It was a major thoroughfare. And then this one, I hope that doesn't make anybody seasick or anything, but just catching a little video. And for me, it's one of those moments that's absolutely amazing just to be out there. Now, you see how brown and arid it is? I mean, we're a couple of months, we're about midway through this dry season. They had not had rain since February and will not have any till November. And so it's brown, it's rough looking like that. But in January and February, it looks like you're in Scotland or Ireland. It's so green and lush. It's breathtaking because we have such normal seasons. It's hard to imagine living in that. But when I talked about those the storms coming in off the Mediterranean, I have seen videos from some of these boat operators where they will show 4 and 5 foot swells on this lake. And it's a lake. It's 11 miles long, 7 miles wide. I mean, we're in the middle of it, and you can just see how easily we can see it. Of course, we all have to cheese it up with our pictures and have a good time there. And Karen, and then when you're on the boat, you got to do the Titanic, I'm king of the world, okay? We all do it. And we just laughed about it. And I didn't even realize I hadn't done many pictures of Tiberias because it is an ancient city. It was around when Jesus was there. We have no record of him being there. But it's also a touristy town, not only for us traveling internationally that's visiting the holy sites up there, but it's a tourist site for the locals. And the best way I can kind of describe Tiberias, it's like an old Myrtle Beach that's still family friendly. Because we'd go down to the boardwalk and walk at night, and I mean, it's the carnival kind of stuff. I mean, Kim had never seen it like this because the locals were there. So they were doing all the cheesy games and fun stuff, and it was just really interesting. After we spent our time on the Sea of Galilee, and every time I talked with folks that have, they'll go, I had a moment too. There's just something about it because you don't change the body of water. You don't change the natural terrain. And so you can imagine, when you hear the story about them going across the Lake of Galilee, you can go, okay, there's Gerasene, there's Capernaum, there's the Mount of the Beatitudes here, here, and here, and here, and you can keep pointing them out. So the first place that typically we go, this is the Mount of the Beatitudes. And for some people, it's always surprising because they're surprised that almost every holy site is a church. Well, it makes sense because after Constantine became emperor of Rome, his mother went to the Holy Land and said, okay, where's our holy sites? And they built churches. Now, this is a fairly new church. It was built in the early 20th century, 19-something. But it's a beautiful church. And the reason that it amazed me, all of the folks that you see there are in our group. This is usually a very crowded place. There's typically 30 to 40 buses in the parking lot. We were the only ones there. And I like churches being full, but I will tell you, traveling, I liked them empty. It was really nice. And so that's our group right there. That's just us right there. And Robbie just came in, and he was one of them. He's the tall, skinny one in the back. And then that's inside the church. And I'm one of those, and I hope this makes sense. Here, I don't need a beautiful church to worship God. But there's something about these churches that are just breathtaking. And you can look at this right here, just that sense. Even the gardens around it. And this was a very bright day, and I might have overexposed the picture a little bit. Now, this one is for Kim. When we were there in 2011, there was one letter broken off of this sign. This is the replacement. But when we were there in 2011, the R on poor was broken off. Blessed are the poor. Yeah, blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. I don't know if that's Winnie or the other one, but it was just, every time we see it, we just giggle. So I have to take a picture for Kim and going, okay, the end's off of heaven now, so that's even concerning to me. After we left there, we headed up towards the Golan Heights. And Golan Heights we know because of the Six-Day War. And so it's an area that's kind of near Lebanon. It's near Syria. In fact, there's a village up there that is split in half between Israel and Lebanon. And you also have some land up there in Jordan. But this is Caesarea Philippi, the picture that you see right here. This is the place where Peter makes the great confession when Jesus says, who do people say that I am? You are the Christ, the Son of the living God. And then what does Jesus say? And the gates of Hades will not overcome this. Here in this area there, they had pagan temples. And could you imagine Jesus going, and the gates of Hades will not overcome this? The gates of hell will not overcome it. It's absolutely a beautiful place up there. In fact, it's where I get my baptismal water. I always get it there because it's coming out of the rock. It's a spring there. It's one of 3 sources for the Jordan River. But you can just see how beautiful and clear that stuff is right there. And it's just amazing. If you go downstream a little bit, you see good brown trout. Don't see many rainbow trout. That's one of those temple that was built into the wall, and that's our group minus me. And so you go and you kind of get it suddenly why Jesus is saying these things, that you point to. After that, we went back south to the northern part of the Sea of Galilee. This is actually the Church of Tabka that celebrates the blessing of the fish and loaves. Can you guys see right here? That's the bread and 2 fish. That mosaic is somewhere from the 3rd or 4th century. Yeah. I mean, that for me is just amazing. And so you go in, and it may have been there, it may not. The tradition says he did it on that rock that's underneath the altar. There's a great term that we'll talk about. When you're there, if you ever get a chance to go, the word tradition will be used. That means it may or may not be true, but we're going to kind of honor it a little bit. But then we go, no, we know. So on this one, that's tradition, but it's still amazing when you talk about 1,700-year-old mosaic that's still intact. And also, a couple of years ago, about 4 or 5 years ago, there were some Zionist Jews that wanted anybody that's not a Jew out of here. This is the church that they attacked and tried to burn. And so they were not successful. Millstone. It looks large, but we don't really have a real good sense of how big. This is when Jesus said it's better for a millstone to be tied around your neck and thrown in than to cause one of these little ones to stumble. That gives you an idea. Robbie is a big boy there, and so it gives us a sense. You would not want that tied around your neck. So after we left that, we went to the Valley of Doves, where I pointed out on the sea. And up there's cave dwellings, and some of the hermits and early church fathers would go up in those caves. And it just really is a pretty breathtaking type of visual in there. And what it's known for, it's called Valley of the Doves, but it's that route between Nazareth and Capernaum, or the Sea of Galilee. And even before you get to Capernaum, you're going to go to Magdala, where Mary Magdalene's from. And we'll look at that right now. And in fact, that's one of the paintings in there. The chapel there at Magdala, this is one of those recently discovered sites. In fact, it's pretty amazing. Beer money bought this land. The guy that owned Corona Beer, good Catholic, there was a cheesy kind of resort there, and the Catholic Church wanted to buy it, and the owner of Corona Beer gave large sums of money to buy the old resort. They basically got rid of the old resort, and they were going to have a hospitality house there. When they started digging, they found Magdala, and they found the synagogue that was there. Now, the cool part about this is that we know Jesus was there. We know he was in Magdala. And what they've done is taken they found some amazing things. But because it's Magdala and Mary Magdalene, the chapel there is in honor of the women of the Bible. And so, I didn't take a picture or didn't get one. There's 12 pillars in the atrium there with the name of a biblical woman on 11 of them. And then the other ones left blank for all the women who have been in ministry to be remembered. It's one of these beautiful, incredible places. And I might call on Robbie and you go, yeah. And this is in one of the chapels. There's a variety. Well, this is actually downstairs where they've recreated the synagogue down there and used rocks from the area that we probably go, okay, some of these rocks Jesus walked on downstairs, but it shows the picture of the woman who had been bleeding for 12 years, reaching out and touching Jesus in the crowd. And he goes, "Who touched me?" And they're like, "Come on, Master, you're being pushed all around." And finally, when she couldn't escape, she said, "I did." Now, you might be able to kind of recognize, looking at the lights a little bit, but this painting here is larger than this backdrop here, probably 50% larger. And when you look at it, you're just amazed. And this chapel, not only because of the women of the Bible, but that's actually looking out on the Sea of Galilee. How amazing is that? That they did that so right. And it's hard to capture all of it because of the dynamic range. But even beyond, when you go beyond the glass there, that they actually have what almost like an infinity pool that goes on out. So it looks like you're going out onto the Sea of Galilee, even though it's probably a tenth of a mile from that. It's just a really cool thing. I wouldn't mind preaching from that if I had to. So that's just really neat. So that was our second day. And your day usually ends about 4 or 5 o'clock. And then day number 3, and if you're friends with me on social media, you've seen that. That's sunrise over the Sea of Galilee. And just absolutely breathtaking. It was so nice. We were on the side of the hotel that I got to see the sunrise, and I'm glad Robbie woke me up and said, "Hey, take a picture of this." So that's what I got. A little bit later, people on the other side didn't get the same. They had to get out of their room. We just stood on our balcony and took pictures. And I was more than happy to be lazy in that way. We headed south, and as you start going south, traditionally most people go through the Jordan River Valley. And as you're going south, on your left side would be Jordan, on the other side the Jordan River. On the right side is Israel. And as you go down, you go the place that we stopped at, Beersheba. Now, it's for Old Testament and biblical purposes. It's where, after Saul was killed in battle, he was nailed to the wall at Beersheba. but what we have here are from the Roman times. This is, they had not done much rebuilding of this. Once again, this is an amazing theater, and it is very large, and it's hard to even kind of give a full grasp of that. You can see someone standing up there, but I stood mid-stage, and the others in our group, some of them, were up higher, and I just spoke in a very natural tone, and they could hear me perfectly. I mean, once again, then you just go, okay, they understood acoustics, and just some more pictures of it. And they're doing some reconstruction and work on it on the stage area that it can be used. And then, I mean, look at that. That's stuff that's been standing for a couple of thousand years, and just the beauty of it. The beautiful part, or the interesting part with Beersheba, is that you get a sense for a Roman town. This was one of the 10 cities, and this was the capital city. But you can see here, this is your traditional Roman road, and that is the Roman road from that period that they were able to help with. And then just seeing the columns. Could you imagine how amazing that would be in all of its glory at one time? The hill behind it is most noted not for the ancient times. Now, you could look over, and sometimes you go, why did they build it here? You get up on there, and you look, and you can see so far away and keep watching. It was just a great defensive area, and also on major trading routes, and that's a little bit wider, larger picture of it. But what I was going to say is, and I don't have a picture, but basically up in here behind that, if you saw the movie Jesus Christ Superstar, where Judas hung himself, that's the tree that they used for that. And it's really not a tree. Robbie got a better sense of it. Once you got up there, it was dead, but it's kind of held up by a metal bracket so that visually you still see it. So, yeah. It's not impressive looking from there, but yeah. But since you had to walk all the way across and go up that with all those steps, I didn't want to get sweaty. So Robbie and Karen and Bob went up. And he wasn't 80, 77. So, because of COVID, we were not going to be allowed to get into Palestine. And some of you have heard me talk about this. The day before, we found out we could. Now, why does that matter? Bethlehem, Jericho, traditional baptismal site. This is one of those going, I did not realize how easy we have it here in America. I don't know about you guys, but my finances really hadn't been affected that much by COVID. Anybody really lose any true finances because of it? Some people are doing better. In Israel, the tourist workers got unemployment. But if you were in Palestine, you got nothing. So we were blessed to be the very first foreign group into Bethlehem. Bethlehem's primary industry is tourism. The biggest store there is the Nissan Brothers, and not only is it a souvenir store, but they have an olive wood factory down below. And every time I've been there, they're busy. I mean, they will have 15, 20 folks either running machines doing it or carving by hand. And this is what I saw. And Kim knows kind of the area. When it stopped, I mean, it just stopped all the way. And it was just mind-numbing to see that. I'm like, oh, my goodness. And then just some art or work that they were working on. And clearly, this is hand-carved, absolutely beautiful. But I started noticing the cobwebs from it, and just they stopped right at it. Chris, who's one of the owners, the Nissan Brother owners, was in tears when he greeted us because we are the first foreign group, or first group they had seen since March of last year, March of 20. They had to lay off over 100 folks, none of them getting any unemployment at all. Just stopped. Now, the Nissan Brothers probably have a high markup, and they did very well, I'm sure. But you're supporting Christians in Bethlehem. And you suddenly go, okay, there's such a small majority of Christians there, you want to be supportive, and so they did. From there, typically you park and walk up maybe a quarter mile, but because of COVID, they just took us right to the very front of the Church of Nativity. And one of the great things, the Church of Nativity is the longest continuously used church in the world. Because when other empires came through, when the Persians came through later, they did not tear down this church because the three wise men were represented and they went, those are our people. How cool is that? So this church has been around since the fourth centuries, continuously used. But you have to bend down to get in. That's why I showed Robbie. Not everybody. Well, most people. Little people don't. So, this is the traditional site of where Jesus was born. The star there. And when you go, the tradition is you, along with several million of your closest friends, kiss the star. I did it once. I'm not doing it again. Now, you didn't really notice above it, it's a little bare. They had so few visitors. This is actually one of the church workers. And in the Greek Orthodox Church, they have icons, paintings to remember things. He had to bring one out because it had been so long since foreigners had been there. I mean, it just blew me away. And then Robbie's down there. Sorry, Robbie, I kept using you. I knew you were going to be here, so... but just kind of, there is something special about it. Now, it might have not been that place, but there's cave systems, and you go, yeah, somewhere around here. And even as part of that cave system is where Jerome, when he did the Latin Vulgate version of the Bible, he was in those caves doing the translation. So it's pretty amazing either way when you start talking about it. This is actually Crusader-era mosaics that are on the walls. And yes, that is gold. I mean, it's just what they did. This picture, and once again, for anybody that's been there, you realize how stunning. That's in the middle of the day. Usually you have a 2-hour wait to get down there. And when you get to that point, it kind of funnels down, and you put your big, strong people in the back so it doesn't squish in. Guess what? There was no problem there. There was another group that were actually there, but they were healthcare workers that worked in Tel Aviv, and they were Philippine nationals, probably Catholic, but they were very quick. And so I was like, I can't believe I'm getting this picture. And then this picture is inside looking out of the church, because there's kind of that narthex and then the second door in. You could almost never get these pictures. I mean, just because, once again, no one else was there. Now this one, as we were heading back into Jerusalem, that's a nice looking park, isn't it? I mean, it looks nice. I mean, it's nice and green. Do you know where that is? You're looking at hell. The Valley of Gehenna. If you've heard of the Valley of Gehenna. You know, you might have heard the song, They Paved Over Paradise. They put a park over hell, which is pretty amazing, because you drive by and on one side there's a soccer field. On this other side is the Valley of Gehenna. So that was finished up our day. The next day we got a real treat that not every group gets to go to. We actually got to go to the Temple Mount. The Temple Mount is a Muslim-controlled area. It's this building that you're looking at, the Dome of the Rock, is the third holiest place for Muslims, but it is an incredible building to look at. And so we were up there very early in the day. Most Muslims don't get out to get up there till about 10 o'clock, so we were there early. We got through security really well, because you go through security all the time, back and forth, and there was no problems at all with us. And that's us looking all cheesy in front of it. So then you get a little bit closer, and it is a beautiful, beautiful building. In 97, we got to go into that building, and the rugs, they are Persian rugs, and it feels like you can swim in them. They're just amazing. They really are. And it's the rock that is holy to Jews, Muslims, and Christians. The rock in there is the traditional site of where Abraham was going to offer up Isaac. But here, for Muslims, they believe this is where Muhammad flew to heaven on a winged horse. I don't know, but either way. Now, on our way out, it's hard to really kind of put this all together. If you see stones like here that have a border on it, that's from Herod the Great building. That's kind of the Roman times. Then you have rocks like this that are much older, or stones that are much older, maybe all the way back to the first temple when Solomon built the temple, about 900 BC. And I couldn't help, you got more Roman stones, you got some newer stones up here. And then if you go to the far right, you may not be able to see it. That's actually barbed wire. because you're coming out of the temple, out of the Temple Mount area. And then you guys notice also what else you see there, modern? Security cameras. Whenever someone asks about, do you feel safe there? Yes, I do. I can honestly tell you, we are monitored. There was one gentleman while we were up on the mount that's a very controversial Jewish politician, and he is a Zionist, meaning that only Jews should be in the Holy Land, and he would like to get them gone, and he's a really controversial issue. Mike's been my tour guide 3 times, loves Jesus, very calm. I watched that man just kind of come unnerved when he saw who it was. Now, he was surrounded about 15 folks that walked him by because the Jews are trying to make their points, or the Zionists. And they're Jews who, once again, the Holy Land wants everybody out, will walk up on the Temple Mount and go to the Eastern Gate. And the Eastern Gate is where Jews, Muslims, and Christians believe the Messiah is going to come through. And so they go over there and pray for it. Now, as respect for the Muslims, we don't take Bibles up there. You don't have any outward display of prayer. You don't even do physical touch between man and woman. You understand that when you go up that. But these folks will go up there, and if you've seen the Orthodox Hasidic Jews, when they pray, they kind of rock back and forth. So they try to eliminate that. But that guy did that. But when he came up, there was another group of officers that came near us. And you could see them talking to each other, and you're like, okay, they're looking out for us. Nothing happened, but some of the people are trying to make a point. From there, we went to Herodian. And many have never heard of it. You know it has to be pretty good when Herod the Great calls it by his own name, okay? It was a palace, and this is the model of it, a palace built on top of a mountain. And then this was his tomb that he had built, so when he died, and he had his own theater in the mountain as well. Now, it wasn't quite tall enough to see all the way back into Jerusalem, so what does Herod the Great have done? Raises the level of the mountain up higher. And so that is at the top. You still have some Roman ruins. You can see kind of down in there. That's of the Roman ruins from that time frame. And just a little wider, you can still see some of the ruins. This is the reconstruction of his own theater there. And then now you're looking out back towards Jerusalem, and you can see some of the taller buildings here and here. And you're looking back toward Jerusalem that otherwise, if Herod hadn't had it raised up, we wouldn't be able to see. And you're going, what's so amazing about this? Now, this is on the back side of that same area. It's at a cross-section of major trading routes. Harry, if you have the faith of a mustard seed, what can you tell a mountain to do? Not just move, but you can tell it to go jump in the sea. We're about 25 miles away, and it's just real hazy, but right there is the Dead Sea. So it suddenly makes sense why he makes comments like that, isn't it? You'd suddenly go, Herod moved the top of a mountain. Jesus saying if you have the faith, you can move the whole mountain, and not just move it up, but tell it to jump 20 miles away. How cool is that? And this is just some of the ruins in Herodian, and that was our day. Day 5, we got going, and early in the day, we head towards Masada. Masada's a area that is not biblically mentioned, but in AD 70, when there was the Jewish revolt and the Romans cracked down on people, some of the rebels went out to Masada. It was a palace built by Herod that was self-sustaining. It's on top of this mesa that's breathtaking, and you can ride a cable car up. Now, where is it? Right in here, you can see the footpath that goes up. Unless you start right at daybreak, you don't want to even try. The day that we were there, Masada, Dead Sea, Qumran, it was a nice warm 115. Yeah. It's a dry heat, but so is my oven, and I don't want to be in there. But I'm more uncomfortable at 90 plus degrees around here with the humidity than I was at 115. Robbie, what did you think? About the same? And so this is the tram ride up, and looking back, you're looking out over the Dead Sea wilderness, but this right here is actually Roman encampments from 2,000 years ago. When the temple fell in 87, rebels went out there, were able to survive for a couple of years. The Romans finally said, we're coming to get you. And so they sent legions out there, and that's part of the encampment. We saw the front side of the Masada. They went around the backside and built an earthen ramp that's about 325 feet high, took a siege machine all the way up to batter it in. The night before it's about to happen, the Jews up there make the decision to take their lives. They drew lots. And so we know this because 5 children and 2 women lived. And Josephus, the Jewish Greek historian, tells about this. And so the special forces for Israel used to do their swearing in there, said we'll never be put in that position anymore. Now they do their swearing in at the Western Wall. But this is looking from the top of Masada towards the Dead Sea. And when we started going, that's the Dead Sea right in here. When we started going there, it was way back here. The Dead Sea is truly dying. It's shrinking. And farther south, if you're looking at this way, it is no longer one continuous body of water. It's that dry. And then you can just see the breathtaking look above this. I mean, and Robbie, you talked about it. Some of those areas just, it's hard visually, camera-wise. I love good pictures. It was a little hazy, but even that, you just visually, you can't even take it fully in. This is looking down at part of the temple. You're on top, but this is some of the extended temple, palace out here. And that's a person right here, if that gives you an idea of the size of it. So it is a massive complex. Here in the bathhouse, you can see some of the painting that they had, or, wall basically art that you have there that truly is just, plaster and paint. And what's kind of cool is Byzantine era. That's when, after Constantine became emperor, they put a chapel up there. So that's the remains of the church up there. From there, we went to Qumran, and that's one of the caves where the Dead Sea Scrolls were found. And there's 15 of them. And then we saw something completely unholy. Robbie in those shorts. We are not allowed at Qumran anymore because of Robbie. I'm picking at him. That day, and we had a good time. I believe we went to the Dead Sea, and floated around. People want to know what's it like. The Dead Sea is just amazing because you're so buoyant. Once you get in about your waist, you cannot touch the bottom anymore because your feet just float up. And for some of us who are a little fluffier than others, we're even more buoyant than others. And so that is fine. Day 6, we went to Jericho. And that's a very old sycamore tree. Impressive looking. It's not 2,000 years old. It's about 1,000 years old. But if you look real hard, you'll find Zacchaeus up there. But you got to look hard. Why? Because he was a wee little man. And a wee little man. Yes. I am joking. Yes. I'm sorry, Beth. Okay. And then that's the Mount of Temptation. That when Jesus was tempted, that's the area that, they think he was in, and just the wilderness here. And then we go to Jericho. There's a great visitor center there. You have the Tell, once again, historical site. We were the first group, not just first foreign group, first group that the Jericho Visitor Center saw in a year and 4 months. I was talking to them, and they said typically, I talked to one of the owners, on a typical day they took in $50,000 to $70,000 a day and had zero for a year and 4 months. Had to lay off over 150 people. They were tickled to death to see us. They invited us. They gave us more food than 40 people could have ate for 8 of us. Robbie felt bad that there was so much. But Robbie had a new girlfriend. Yeah. And you can see what happened when he tries to kiss her, or him. Not very happy. But we did have our chic. And this is the Tell up behind us, where, the oldest continuously lived city in the whole world, over 10,000 years old, of documented people living in Jericho because there's a spring nearby and good water. After we did that, we went to, this was the right day. We went to the Jordan River. Right behind me is the Jordan River. So much of the water is pulled off for irrigation and other things. And so I'm doing a little devotion there as we get ready to baptize. On the other side, we're on the, Israel-Palestine side. And on the other side of that is Jordan. That's the country Jordan. And over there is a Eastern or Greek Orthodox church that when I've been there before, you see people come down, and the water will fluctuate tremendously from rainy season to dry season. Um, and so do it remembrance. And this is people remembering their baptism. I mean, when you're at the Jordan River, you're going to remember your baptism. And that was just really, really cool. So that was Karen remembering her baptism, and I'm not sure who that is. And those are the four that were immersed and remembered their baptism. So it was really kind of cool. Up until 2013, only locals could go to this site one time a year. Now, I don't know if Robbie noticed or not, but when you drive in, there's fences on both sides, and you start looking at the signs and said, "Do not cross minefields." And you kind of like, I hope our bus driver doesn't have an issue, you know. And you just go, okay. And you see areas in old barracks from that used to be, because it was controlled by Jordan up until 67. So there's still the modern and the ancient together. Day 7, we started. Yes. That's correct. You don't want to do that. And in fact, you have Israeli security above you, soldiers. I mean, they're M16s. Typically, you have Jordanian soldiers over on the other side. I mean, but they're young kids, and nobody gives an issue. We're all there for the Jordan River. But yeah, I've been there when I've seen a bunch of groups on the Jordan side, and I wanted to go to Jordan to Petra, if you know where Petra's at. But because of COVID, we couldn't go into Jordan, so hopefully next time I'll get to go to Petra and experience that. If you don't know what Petra is, think about Indiana Jones and the Holy Grail. I think it was in that movie where it's the city built into the rocks. Day 7, actually, it's the old city. And that, when I took that picture, it just amazed me. You have these ancient cities. You have all the power lines there and modern conveniences with the Dome of the Rock, which is still a stunning building to look at. And so then we are on the Via della Rosa. And actually, stop number 1, we couldn't get to because there were not. It's a site that's underground, and it's truly Roman road, and it's the Praetorium where Jesus is before the soldiers and they're mocking them. It was closed because there weren't enough. But how interesting it is, the Via della Rosa, the Way of Sorrow, that the ways are marked, and it just looks like a plow disc with Roman numerals on it. So that's station number 3, if you can see that. Right next to it, as far as from you guys, station number 4. You know, and you're like, okay, that's not very far away. And then we went to, I think this is station 6. That rock that his hand's on, tradition says that's where Jesus fell. This is where he stumbled, one of the times he stumbled, and his handprint was there. Tradition, no. I mean, it is tradition, but we don't buy it. There's 12 of them. The last 4 or 5 are in the Church of the Holy Sepulchre. This is the entrance to the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, the traditional site. And I will go ahead and show that picture. Kind of where this dome is. You come in the door here, and up here is Calvary. And then if you were to go in and go left, maybe 50, 75 feet would be the traditional site of the tomb. I'm going to show you this, the ladder there. That ladder has been there at least since 1858, maybe even longer. It's the ladder of status quo. There are 6 different churches that have access to the church, or they have, you know, the Romans, the Greek church, the Greek Orthodox church, and the Roman Catholics by far have the biggest, but you have Coptic, you have Syriac, you have Ethiopian, and I'm missing one. I can't recall what it is right now. But they all have chapels in there. But because of the status quo, if anybody does any changes that are not 100% agreed on, they might lose their rights to the church. So that ladder was put there at least 1858, and no one will move it afraid to lose rights to the church. Yes, that's not a very proud moment for us Christians. And because there is so much bickering between the churches, do you know who the keeper of the key is? It's a Muslim family. Because they're like, okay, we'll let them in. And that's the doors into it, and you can see what massive doors they are, where they have these on metal runners with areas. Once again, this is a crazy, hectic time normally, but this is just our group coming in. That is the entrance into the Holy Sepulchre, the burial site. And it's hard to even give you how large this church is. This rotunda is absolutely massive. It's probably 80 feet, 80 to 100 feet up in air. It's just breathtaking. I mean, yeah. And if you didn't, I know there's some listening in, that these lower arches here, 25, 30, 8 to 10 feet up here, and I mean, I'm so far down. And then that's us going in. That's part of our group going into the Holy Sepulchre. Once again, my 6 other times here, I had never been in because it's 3 to 5 hour wait typically. And usually I don't like this place at all because it's busy, it's crazy, it's hectic. And other than some locals and some clergy, church workers, we were the only ones there. It was absolutely amazing. This is inside, but not inside. And where it's a Greek Orthodox, it's very ornate and just some more. And underneath that glass is, tradition says it's part of the rock that was rolled in front of the tomb. And that's just going into it, very ornate, and just kind of pausing and looking, some people looking at it. And that's the first time I had ever been in the Holy Sepulchre there. And, I mean, it's one of those going, it is tight, maybe 3 people in there at any given time. This is kind of the center, this is the left side, and kind of the right side. And, of course, in the Greek Orthodox Church, it's very ornate. I mean, that's, I would imagine, fully gold. No problem at all. And it's just going, they're going, this is the most holy site for Christians by tradition. And so they treat it with respect. This picture amazed me, this one and this one right here, seeing the light come in and shining directly on that. It caught it at the right time. I don't know how well it shows up, but the lighting, and that was not artificial lighting, that was natural light coming in. I was like, that's so cool. Now, this looks very uninteresting, and I recognize this right here. But for me, it changed everything for how I felt about this church. If you go into the Syriac Church chapel, it's just right off, maybe from here to somewhere, 40, 50 feet away is where the Holy Sepulchre is. But you go into the little chapel. There's a hole in the wall that almost looks like an oversized hole for Jerry, with Tom and Jerry, And then you bend down and you look in it, and these are first century tombs. And it suddenly, I went, this is a cemetery, because you're inside the walls now of the city, but it was outside in the time of Jesus. And you just suddenly go, oh my goodness, it makes sense. And so when I saw that first time in 2014, when I was introduced to it, it changed everything. It really did. After we were through there and we had an amazing time, I know I'll never get to experience again that way. We headed off and came down into the major court area. We were just great view. We came down and kind of went to the western wall a little bit, spent some time, and then we head out. That gate right here. Other than Kim, can anybody tell me what gate that is? And Robbie. It makes me laugh. Can anybody read it? Dung gate. Yeah, that's pretty crappy, I know. But it really is the dung gate. It's where from the sacrifice, the dung and the blood would flow out of that gate when the temple was active. So, and now you got taxis coming and going. After we left that, we actually went, and I didn't get as many inside pictures because once again I had such moments. This is a church that is at Caiaphas' house. Caiaphas was the high priest when Jesus was tried. And so you go there and you can see the art up there that it's kind of Jesus being taken in. And then we see the doors, which are absolutely amazing. And the red is representing Peter. And you go down. Yes, ma'am. My time?
No, I'm just letting you know 5 minutes.
Okay, 5 minutes. Thank you. I got 6 minutes, but thanks, Kim. I'm one day away. But where most everybody believes that Jesus was kept was down in the cistern. He was lowered down overnight and raised back up, so you go down there. And it's one of those places you go, oh, wow. But when they were doing some archaeological digs, they found a cross that was inside the hole of the cistern. There was a cross that the early church remembered this for a reason. So we do think that's where Jesus was kept. Day 8, our final day in the Holy Land. start on the Mount of Olives overlooking Jerusalem, which is absolutely breathtaking. I mean, even for us, if you can look in the background, I don't know how well it shows up, but Jerusalem is a crazy fast growing church. Construction tower, construction tower, construction tower. Two more over there, another one here. Modern Jerusalem is growing like crazy. But yet, some of the things that are worthy of pointing out, down below us, this is all Jewish graves. Over here, you have more graves, and to the far right is the Eastern Gate. I was looking, I didn't get a picture of it. That's where some create some issues. For scale of things, this is the dome of the Black Dome. It's a synagogue. 5,000 people can be in that synagogue at a time. Yeah. All right, and I will point this out a little bit later. Those are the teaching steps, and it will matter. Well, after you go from the Mount of Olives, we go down to the Garden of Gethsemane, into the Church of All Nations. They were getting ready to do a worship service in there, so the lights were up. They were actually broadcasting it, and there were priests from all over Israel coming in for it. That was probably the best picture I ever got. Church of All Nations, that's representing the United States, our crescent, and then that's just a little bit bigger of it. This right here, because they were getting ready to start the service, this is the traditional site where Jesus goes to pray with Peter, James, and John, where he goes a little bit further away. This is Kim's favorite place, right here. And there is something amazing about it when you go up and, once again, is it the place? I don't know, but it's remembered as the place, and it's at the altar in the church. This is the beautiful ceiling and altar, and those are all nuns or priests sitting there for the worship service about to start. And just another one, how about a 2,000-year-old olive tree in the Garden of Gethsemane? I mean, you just go, this was here when Jesus was here. And that's just amazing to me. Outside of the Church of All Nations looking up, I told you we'd get to the teaching steps, and that's it right here. Now, the reason I point this out, this is where all the rabbis would come and talk, and even when Jesus, when he was 12 years old, and his parents, this is most likely where he was talking with the rabbis, questioning, talking back and forth. Now, we know where the steps to the temple went up and came down and where they would be. Right here is a half a gate. We know that this is the location where the steps from the temple came down. So when you get up to that area, it's landing on bedrock. You can't move bedrock, correct? It's there. So we can say with great certainty Jesus walked in this 10 by 10 area. But this is also, you get the size and scale of how large it is. And here, our group, minus me because I'm taking the picture, standing on the bedrock where we can say with great certainty Jesus walked here multiple times. These steps, Jesus taught. This is where Peter and John, when they would be through with the temple, would go back and teach. And this is most likely the location where 3,000 came to faith, probably where it took place when Peter preached. How cool is that? And then, let me go to this one. There's a place called the Garden Tomb. It's Murray, I can't remember it right now. That's a location that Protestants kind of like to say, hey, maybe this was it. There's a place just outside behind the main bus terminal that the hillside looks like a skull, so Golgotha. It's interesting, it's neat, it's a beautiful place to go. It's where us Protestants can have Holy Communion. But I got Robbie because that's a first century tomb, and there is a trough where a stone could roll back and forth. And so it's one of those places you go, this is probably what it looked like, or maybe looked alike, but not very much, not very likely the exact location. The longer I'm alive and the more I see the evidence pointing to the Church of the Holy Sepulchre is there. And I have 1 minute, and I am done. So, any questions within 1 minute, then I'll pray and let those who want to go. Well, before it's questions, I'm going to share a couple of things up here. One of my sunset rises. If you want to see what a widow's mite is like, I got a couple of them up here. Got a great deal on some, and so I was tickled to death. Some olive wood oil. I got Kim enough wine for her from Cana of Galilee. Pomegranate. a little rock that one of the artists did from the Sea of Galilee that has fish, a stone from Jerusalem. This is glass, which is absolutely beautiful, that I just love, love, love. This is a picture that I got that I wanted to, because I love the vase that went along with it, but I just love the colors through it. So, Jericho, yep. And I have another set coming, but it's being shipped. The vase that I loved, I mean, on the other one, I decided I would bring back myself and not pay to ship. You notice I'm holding up one piece. So, here's our group. Me preaching at Emmaus and some work. Love this. We didn't get to go this time, but it's water from Jacob's well. You go down, you drink it, and you're good to go. And then some anointing oil and some more olive wood. Any questions? Nope. 7:31. I'm praying.
Which church has the actual Holy Sepulchre in it?
6 of them.
I know, but I mean, like, which one actually has the place?
I don't know. Oh, wait, it's controlled by the Greek Orthodox Church. But when you go up to, like I told you, you go up to Calvary, on one side is the Roman Catholic, on the other side is Greek Orthodox. So yes, it is the Greek Orthodox that have the Holy Sepulchre. But there's multiple chapels in there. But the Ethiopian church, Coptic church from Egypt, their chapel is on the roof. So it's kind of wild. I'm like, man, they don't even get inside.
Can you go in all of them?
Yes. Yeah. It's pretty amazing. I mean, sometimes there's a long wait, like going up to Calvary. The stones that going up to it, it's been walked on so much that the stones are just worn down. I mean, it's almost, you're just like, wow, to think of the millions of people that have been here. So I will stop, Kim. 7:32. Nope, she's trying to keep me on task. Let's pray, and then if you have questions, I'll let you, those who need to go can go. So, Father, we love you, and I thank you for this day. I thank you for your blessings and this chance to share, and I pray that it would just be productive and helpful. We give you praise and thanks in Christ's name. Amen. All right, if you want to leave, you can leave. All right, any questions? Oh, absolutely. That's part of the appeal and fun of it. Yeah, if you pay full price, you're paying too much. It's part of the game. Yeah, it really is.
And the Jewish food, did you eat much Jewish food as far as meals?
It was kosher. It was absolutely kosher. Yeah, because Robbie wanted a cheeseburger, but he couldn't get a cheeseburger because you cannot eat beef, or you can't eat the mother and the milk of the mother. So you wouldn't do cheese and meat together at the same meal. Yeah, the mother and the offspring. Those are widow's mites. You think about, or the mite, that she put in, those are 2 widow's mites. About worth a half a cent, but let's just say I paid a little more than that. Yep. Yes. Yeah. Oh, thank you.
Yeah, I appreciate it.
No, absolutely. Yeah. I didn't bring all my garb with me. So, all right, for those who joined us online, thanks for joining us. I'm going to end in just a moment. Thanks.